Hello Horror Hounds. If you've already seen my Wishmaster 3 review, you'll know that I noted that the occasional nudity in the film was, I thought, to distract the eager young male viewer from the fact that the story was pretty thin. So with that in mind, I want to throw a Wishmaster 4 statistic at you. Our first instance of female nudity, and indeed a sex scene, happens about 2.5 minutes into the film. Then the film jumps ahead 3 years later, and we don't get our first line of dialogue until after the 5-minute mark. That's right, we get a sex scene before anyone speaks. Statistics, statistics, statistics. Honestly, what can I say at this point about Wishmaster 4, The Prophecy Fulfilled, that hasn't already been said? Unless, of course, I start making up words like snargleflume. This is a real snargleflume of a movie, folks. What do I mean by that? Well, let me try and explain. I suppose 4 words will do. The gin falls in 5. Shit. That's right, folks, not only can I not count, but the gin falls in love in this movie. Before we get to that, can I just acknowledge that there are some bits in this that could have made a great Wishmaster movie. For instance, straight out of the traps, the Jinn doesn't just announce himself and his evil plan. You are the Waker. I must grant you 3 wishes, and upon the 3rd wish, I shall unleash hell upon the earth and rule over its ashen remains. So, with that bit of admin out of the way, please, proceed to make your first wish. No, he doesn't tell the Waker in this movie that he's an evil genie, and he just sets about granting her wishes. In fact, the 3rd wish that will fulfill the prophecy is made halfway into this movie. The Wishmaster script has been flipped. They are trying something new. Unfortunately, what they're trying is the gene falls in love. Very low on kills. There's one standout kill. It's almost as if they saved up their entire budget for one kill sequence. It is kind of cool that the Jinn, in the guise of a human lawyer, is on the phone to another lawyer, gets him to pull his tongue out, cut his nose off, stab himself in the cheek, and then shoot himself all over the phone. Marred slightly by the fact that you have a guy who cuts his nose off, and then later on in the same scene, you clearly see that he has a nose. There's another really low-key wish granted that takes place in a restaurant, and the only reason I mention it is that as the wish is being granted, no effects or anything like that, but some vaguely Middle Eastern music is playing over it. Apart from the opening in 12th century Persia of the original movie, this is the only moment that alludes to anything like the Middle Eastern origins of the myth of the Jinn. Just the introduction of a slight flavour of Middle Eastern music made me pine for someone to attempt to tell this story and draw on the myths and legends from this country. Give it the Middle Eastern flavour, give it the Persian flavour, and have someone please try and beat the devil at his own game. There are a plethora of stories of wish-granting devils and humans who trick them to draw from, so please stop introducing hunky Catholic priests and hunky douchebag angels to try and fight the Jinn. This time round, the sword-wielding archetype of godly vengeance is to be found in the shape of a character known only as the Hunter. An addition to the Wishmaster mythos so head-scratching that I found myself pondering more his job description than his actual benefit to this film. Because we've never actually really seen a 3rd wish get made, apart from the first film, the 3rd wish instantly makes a time paradox that unravels the entire film. Because we've never seen a 3rd wish granted, we've never seen the Hunter before. And the Hunter's entire raison d'etre is to reactivate when the 3rd wish is made by the Waker, just on the eve of all hell being let loose, to track him or her down and kill her before the wish is granted. It seems like a very specific and minute window of opportunity for this deadly yet angelic supposed character to fulfill their mission. The hunter, you might say if you were being uncharitable, is a useless character. The introduction of the hunter devolves this entire movie from, up until that point, it had a kind of vibe of the 90s Outer Limits TV show. And it felt like, to be perfectly honest, the story could be told in an hour-long time slot rather than a feature length, and wouldn't look out of place in amongst those Outer Limits episodes. As soon as the hunter turns up on the scene with his sword and starts having fights with the djinn, it quickly devolves into feeling like a really, really shitty episode of the Highlander TV series. I'm going to try and find links to some of these scenes and put them in the description fields below, because if you haven't seen this film, the level of crapitude I'm talking about now, human words can't possibly express. You'll have to watch them play out on your own. So the final wish is made, the third wish is made, and all the djinn has to do is grant it, to unleash his trapped djinn brethren to spill out across the earth, unleash hell, and rule over the chaos created in their wake. What we've been promised is the end game for every djinn since the first movie. But it's a trick wish. She wishes for love. I wish, she says, I could love you, the djinn, in disguised human form for who you really are. But how can that be? As soon as she knows who he really is, there's no way she's going to love him, right, man? And anyway, supposedly, true human love is something that has to be given freely, not something that can be magicked up. So our djinn is in a little bit of a quandary, and that's where we get the second half of this movie, where the djinn tries to woo the waker and make her fall in love with him, whilst at the same time maybe kind of falling in love with her a little bit. Andrew Divo's djinn would never have had any of this. And given that the djinn this time round is John Novak, someone who I didn't want to rag on for his turn in Wishmaster 3, because he's hardly in it, and it seems unfair to rag on an actor for not being a different actor. That's just an accident of birth. He can't help that. Unfortunately, in this movie, someone seems to have given John Novak free rein to express himself in the role of the djinn, and he has decided to go broad. There is one scene where the horns that the djinn did have that sort of become slimy tentacle things, he starts playing with them like pigtails. Whoever's in charge of the script really wants him to move in a Freddy direction. He has got the cheesiest dialogue and the worst jokes. Worse than Freddy's jokes from Freddy's Dead. There's a scene where he beats up a guy and then stabs him and then throws him in a trash can. And then his quip, when the guy's in the garbage thing, is he makes a joke about garbage collection dates. He kills him, throws him in the thing, and says, "Now, is it Mondays and Wednesdays or Tuesdays and Thursdays?" If it's any consolation, his brethren djinn, on the cusp of being released, finally, as the prophecy has been telling them for thousands of years, seem to be just as frustrated with this djinn as we, the viewers, are. And more than once they appear within a very unconvincing wall of computer-generated fire to kind of chivvy him along, almost as if they're turning up to try and prod the movie into some kind of life, with conversations that more or less go along lines like, "The Waker has made the third wish. Grant it and release us." "It's not as easy as that, guys. She's wished for love, and that can only be given freely rather than taken." "You're wasting time. Our reign of terror is almost upon us. Grant the third wish." "I'm trying really hard to grant the third wish, guys, but all this pressure, really, it's not helping." "Oh my What? You're in love with her, aren't you? I don't believe it. No, I'm not in love with her. Shut up. Your mum's in love with her. Seriously, dude. Before I cap off the video with an Internet Movie Database user review, one of my lovely viewers, that's you guys out there, Robert, asked me when I uploaded the review for the first Wishmaster movie if I could do a ranking of the series, and I said to him, well, I'm planning on doing a video for each of the 4, but if I remember, I'll slip in a ranking in my Wishmaster 4 video for you of the Wishmaster series. It's 4, 3, 2, 1. I don't know why I'm building it up, and if any of you out there want to cut out and keep that ranking, that works perfectly for the Jaws, ranking the Jaws movies as well, in my opinion. And as we know, my opinion is just that, one pimple on the enormous buttock of the world that is made up of an entire spectrum of weird and wonderful opinions. So I like to try these days and finish with alternate viewpoints taken from user reviews from the Internet Movie Database. One only this time round, but one that focuses in, it's from a user called Matthew Capitano, and he's really drilled down to the core issue with Wishmaster 4. So it takes these wry eyes, sometimes it takes these alternate viewpoints to just drill right down to the nub of it. I've spent minutes blathering on about this, and Matthew Capitano has just got to the nub of it with a review called Not Bad, but Way Too Many Tom Cruise Clones. I'm really sick of these idiot Hollywood casting directors hiring guys who look just like Tom Cruise. I think there's a Tom Cruise clone acting school somewhere, and to attend there, you have to look exactly like that short little shit. Never mind that Tom Cruise cannot act, he's a midget, and is miscast in every film he's in. There's a group of malcontents in Hollywood who choose to hold Tom as if he's the model of the most handsome man on earth. Isn't that pathetic? As for the movie, it ain't half bad. Unfortunately, besides all the Cruise clones, the lead chick has fat thighs and a bad hairstyle, though she's got great boobs, which we never get to see. Not as bad as some reviewers state. Recommended for fans of the series.